From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is ATN International News. To begin, let's take a look at the headlines. IMF staff on fact-finding mission in Kenya. Morocco reports first Mpox case. Ex-Minister Pravin Gordhan dies at 75. Judge dismisses 2 criminal counts against Trump. Typhoon death toll rises to 233 in Vietnam. Russian attack killed 2, injured 6. Iconic indigenous cloak returned to Brazil. These and many more stories to come your way in a moment. Please stay with us.
From life across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics.
International Monetary Fund is visiting Kenya to assess the government's situation following deadly protests and a budget deficit as President Ruto abandoned the finance bill, leading to unpaid bills and delayed IMF funding disbursement. ATN gathered that the International Monetary Fund is conducting a fact-finding mission with Kenyan authorities to find a balanced path forward, according to Julie Kozak, Head of Communications. Further updates will be provided once the mission is completed. Kenya agreed a 4-year loan with the International Monetary Fund in 2021 and signed up for additional lending to support climate change measures in May 2023, taking its total International Monetary Fund loan access to $3.6 billion. The International Monetary Fund requires regular reviews of reforms, in Kenya's case every 6 months, before it releases tranches of funding. Kenya reached a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund in June on the 7th review of its program, but the protests and ensuing withdrawal of the finance bill put a sign-off by the fund's executive board and subsequent payouts on hold. Kenyan government officials have previously said they expect the International Monetary Fund Board to consider approving the disbursement of a $600 million tranche later this month, but no date has been set for a meeting to discuss this. Morocco on Thursday confirmed its first Mpox case in a man in Marrakech, the health ministry said. The World Health Organization declared the recent outbreak of the disease a public health emergency of international concern after the new variant was identified. The ministry did not offer details on the case and did not specify which variant of the viral infection was recorded. It said his condition is stable and that his contacts did not exhibit symptoms. South African rand was little changed in early trade on Friday as markets weighed up bets on the size of a rate cut expected in the world's biggest economy next week. At 8 a.m., the rand traded at 17.7550 against the dollar, near its Thursday closing level of 17.7625. The dollar last traded softer against a basket of peers as investors remain on tenterhooks ahead of next week's Federal Reserve meeting. While markets are certain the Fed will cut rates, uncertainty around whether it will go with a 25 basis point or 50 basis point cut remains. On Friday, the Rand will likely track developments in the lead-up to the meeting. The risk-sensitive local unit often takes direction from global drivers like U.S. monetary policy in the absence of major local data points. Next week, local investors will focus on August consumer inflation figures on September 18th and the South African Reserve Bank's interest rate announcement on September 19th. Economists polled by reporters predicts the South African Reserve Banks will announce a 25 basis points rate cut. On the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the blue chip top 40 was up about 0.3% in early trade. South Africa's benchmark 2030 government bond also firmed in early deals as the yield slipped 3 basis points to 8.97%. South Africa's former finance minister Pravin Gordhan has died at the age of 75. His family said the anti-apartheid struggle veteran played a key role in South Africa's transition to democracy and helped negotiate the end of white minority rule. As well as finance minister, he occupied other top government and administrative roles since the 1990s until they announced his retirement from politics in May. The veteran cabinet minister died in hospital early on Friday after a short courageous battle with cancer, his family said in a statement. It added that he was surrounded by his family, closest friends, and his lifelong friends in the liberation struggle when he passed away in the early hours this morning. South African Finance Minister David Gordhan is credited with transforming the South African Revenue Service from 1999 to 2009. He served as Finance Minister from 2009 to 2014 and later the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Gordhan was born in Durban in 1949 and became involved in the struggle against white minority rule. He co-chaired the Convention for a Democratic South Africa in 1991, negotiating the end of apartheid and established a democratic government. South African Finance Minister Ngoyin Fu Thiongo was a key figure in the fight against state capture, a term used to describe the undue influence of private interests over state institutions. He was sacked in 2017 due to corrupt allegations against President Zuma's administration. In 2016, he was charged with fraud but later dropped. He was appointed Public Enterprises Minister in 2018, but his role was criticized for failing to tackle corruption in state-owned enterprises. Gordhan announced his retirement ahead of May 2024 elections and is survived by his wife and daughters. Gabon lawmakers are discussing a new constitution, marking the first step towards civilian government after the 2023 coup by the ruling military junta. The coup put an end to 55 years of rule by the family of former President Ali Bongo Ondimba, and a new constitution would include abolishing the post of Prime Minister and a 7-year presidential term, renewable once. Candidates for head of state would have to be the offsprings of Gabonese-born parents, according to a version of the proposed document seen circulated online, a claim authorities in the oil-rich country have not denied. The proposed text is also notably believed to define marriage as a union between a man and a woman and would also make military service compulsory while confirming French as the country's official language. A presidential decree published on Wednesday proposed for lawmakers to meet from Thursday to September 2022 to work through the text. The decree gives them that 10-day period in which to form a reasoned opinion on a final text drafted from 1,000 proposals collected during a national dialogue organized in April. General Brice Oligui Nguema has announced a 2-year transition timetable for the country with a presidential election scheduled for August 2025. after Bongo's election. The military dissolved institutions appointed 98 deputies and 70 senators to a transitional parliament and is drafting amendments for a new constitution before cabinet adoption. A referendum is scheduled before the end of the year. Georgia judge has on Thursday dismissed 2 criminal counts in the U.S. state's 2020 election interference case against Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and 1 other count against allies of the former president. Fulton County Judge Scott McFay ruled state prosecutors lacked authority to bring charges related to false documents in federal court, allowing 8 charges against Trump and 14 co-defendants for racketeering and other conspiracy allegations. The case has been on hold since June while a Georgia appeals court considered whether the lead prosecutor, Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, must be disqualified over alleged misconduct while tied to a romantic relationship she had with a former top deputy. Arguments in the appeals court are scheduled for December, meaning the case will not progress before the November 5th election when Trump faces Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. A separate federal case Trump faced for his efforts to overturn his election defeat nationally has also been slowed dramatically by a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that found that presidents have broad immunity from criminal prosecution. Thursday's decisions relates to allegations that Trump and his allies assembled a slate of fraudulent presidential electors and filed a civil lawsuit challenging the election results that contained false claims. The ruling means that 5 of the original 13 criminal counts against Trump in the indictment obtained last year have now been tossed out. McAfee in March dismissed 6 other counts, including 3 against Trump. A spokesperson for Willis' office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. In a separate decision on Thursday, McAfee upheld the primary charge in the case, racketeering, which has been brought against all the defendants. Republican nominee Donald Trump said on Thursday that he would not participate in another presidential debate against Kamala Harris ahead of the November 5th election, after several polls showed his Democratic rival won their debate earlier this week. There will be no third debate, the former president wrote on social media site Truth Social. Trump had participated in a debate against President Joe Biden in June before his debate against Harris on Tuesday. Although Trump touted his performance on Tuesday against Harris, 6 Republican donors and 3 Trump advisors who spoke to newsmen earlier this week said they thought Harris had won the debates largely because Trump was unable to stay on message. The debates attracted 67.1 million television viewers, according to Nielsen data. Harris, speaking at a rally shortly after Trump's post went live, said she believed they owe it to the voters to have another debate, while Trump said in his post that polls showed he won the debate. Several surveys show that respondents through Harris did better. A poll revealed that 53% of registered voters believe Harris won the debate, while 24% believe Trump won. A television flash poll also showed Harris outperformed Trump, with 54% of respondents stating Harris won, while 31% say Trump won. Dashcam footage shows the moment a freight train crashes into a military vehicle in Goose Creek, South Carolina. According to local media reports, the crash happened on Thursday afternoon when a lowboy trailer carrying a U.S. Army M109 Howitzer got stuck on the tracks. No injuries were reported. Local authorities and CSX, the train's operator, are investigating the incident. 4 activists for black rights have been convicted for federal charges of conspiring to act as unregistered Russian agents, the Justice Department said. 4 African activists, including Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Augustus Roman, face up to 5 years in prison for acting as agents for a foreign government. They carried out actions in the U.S. between 2015 and 2022 on behalf of the Russian government, received support from Alexander Inoff, president of the Moscow-based anti-globalization movement of Russia. Ionov, a Russian intelligence officer, was allegedly supervised by Russia's Federal Security Service. He and two FSB agents, Alexei Borisovich Sukhodolov and Yegor Sergeyevich, have been indicted in the U.S. Among their actions cited by prosecutors was the drafting by APSP in 2015 of a petition to the UN accusing the U.S. of committing genocide against African people. Mr. Ionov also allegedly sought to influence the 2017 mayoral election in St. Petersburg, Florida, in which Neville unsuccessfully ran for office. 4 individuals were prosecuted for censoring their pro-Russian views, with Leonard Goodman stating that the case is about free speech. Yashitela, who was convicted, expressed willingness to be charged and found guilty of working for black people. Biden administration has granted Egypt its full allocation of $1.3 billion in military aid for the first time, despite ongoing human rights concerns. This comes as Washington relies heavily on Cairo to mediate unsuccessful talks between Israel and Hamas on a ceasefire deal. $320 million of the $1.3 billion in U.S. foreign military financing to Egypt is subject to conditions that have led to withholdings in recent years. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has waived a $225 million certification requirement on Egypt's human rights record, citing U.S. national security interests. The decision is crucial for regional peace and Egypt's contributions to U.S. national security priorities, including Gaza ceasefire agreement, hostage release, humanitarian assistance, and ending the Israel-Hamas conflict. Cairo has remained a close regional ally of Washington despite accusations of widespread abuses under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's government, including torture and enforced disappearance. Sisi denies political prisoners in Egypt, stating stability and security are key. The war in Gaza has increased Washington's reliance on Cairo for diplomatic efforts and humanitarian aid. Blinken withheld military aid due to Egypt's failure to release political prisoners. Egypt has released $95 million tied to progress on political prisoners, including draft legislation to reform petrol detention and the penal code, the release of some political prisoners, and ending travel bans and asset freezes. Rights groups questions the effectiveness of the legislation and claim some human rights lawyers remain under travel bans. The State Department is continuing dialogue with Egypt on human rights improvements to maintain the strongest possible U.S.-Egypt partnership. North Korea showcased images of centrifuges producing nuclear fuel during a visit by Kim Jong-un to a uranium. The state media report. The state media report on Kim's visit to the Nuclear Weapons Institute and a production base for weapon-grade nuclear materials was accompanied by the first photos of the centrifuges, providing a rare look inside North Korea's nuclear program, which is banned under multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions. The photos showed Kim working between long rows of metal centrifuges, the machines that enrich uranium. The report did not make clear when the visit occurred nor the facility's location. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has urged workers to produce more tactical nuclear weapons, stating the country's arsenal is crucial for self-defense and preemptive attacks. South Korea has condemned North Korea's uranium enrichment facility and will never accept its possession of nuclear weapons. Satellite imagery suggests possible expansion at the Yongbyon Nuclear Scientific Research Center. Uranium, a naturally radioactive element, undergoes processes to produce nuclear fuel, with increased concentration of uranium-235 according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. North Korea has developed its own centrifuges to enhance separation capabilities and strengthen the production of weapon-grade nuclear materials. The photo shows smaller and shorter centrifuges that previously believed to be used by the country. The new type of centrifuge shows North Korea advancing its fuel cycle capabilities and suggests that tactical nuclear weapons designed may primarily rely on uranium for their cores. The photos are the first and only photographs of the equipment, demonstrating North Korea's advanced enrichment capability. North Korea's recent high-level meeting with Russian security official Sergei Shoigu could influence the U.S. election and signal to the next administration that denuclearization is no longer possible and North Korea should be recognized as a nuclear state. Pyongyang continues to supply weapons to Russia, including new ballistic missiles. North Korea has conducted 6 underground nuclear tests between 2006 and 2017, and its nuclear weapons estimates varies widely. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after this short break. Please do stay with us.
From the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring all the sport news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economic, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Welcome back to the broadcast of the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We're open for adverts, placements, bookings, and commercials. And you can connect with us and watch us on ATN, all our ATN socials. On Facebook and YouTube is Atlantic Television Network. Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1. X, formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website at atlanticnetwork.tv. And now to the rest of our stories. Philippine celebrity pastor Apollo Quiboloy, who calls himself the appointed son of God, pleaded not guilty on Friday to several criminal charges, including sexual abuse, abusing a child during arraignments in 2 separate courts. His lawyer said. Quiboloy, leader of the Philippine-based Kingdom of Jesus Christ Church, which says it has 6 million followers worldwide, arrived at the heavily guarded passage court in a bulletproof helmet and vest. He told his followers to stay strong before police took him into the courtroom. Quiboloy also pleaded not guilty to the sexual abuse charges at the Quezon City Court via teleconferencing. Quiboloy, a longtime friend of former President Rodrigo Duterte, is on a U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation's most wanted list after he was indicted for sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other crimes. He will remain in detention at a police headquarters for now, the police said. ATN gathered that the 74-year-old pastor was arrested on Sunday at the KOJ's 30-hectare compound in southern Davao City after a weeks-long police operation. After his arrest, the police said more people had come forward alleging they had been sexually abused by him. Apollo C. Quiboloy and his co-accused will be revealed in the truth, according to a counsel for one of the alleged victims. The church KOJC has stated that members are not forced to act against their will. India's Supreme Court granted bail on Friday to opposition leader and Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in a graft case, paving the way for his release almost 6 months after he was arrested. Kejriwal's release is expected to boost the morale of his decade-old Aam Aadmi Party AAP, as it will allow him to campaign in regional elections next month in the northern state of Haryana, where AAP is trying to make inroads, and in Delhi early next year. Kejriwal was first taken into custody in March by India's financial crime fighting agency, weeks before the country's national elections, in relation to alleged irregularities in the capital city liquor policy. Kejriwal, a former Prime Minister of India, was granted bail in a graft case but remains detained due to previous arrests. AAP denies the allegations and Justice Surya Kant ordered his release. The bench splits on Kejriwal's appeal, with Kanti holding it lawful and Justice Bhuyan questioning the timing. AAP defended the verdict, stating truth can be troubled but not defeated. Opposition parties demand Kejriwal's release, accusing his arrest of BJP's attempt to deny them a level playing field in polls. China's top legislative body has approved a proposal to raise the country's retirement age, the officials in Hu News agency said on Friday, accelerating an overhaul of decades-old laws to tackle the economic pressure of a shrinking workforce. China's retirement age is among the lowest globally, with life expectancy rising to 78 years by 2050. To address this, the retirement age will be raised for men to 63, white-collar women to 58, and blue-collar women to 55, effective January 1st, 2025. China's top lawmakers have discussed raising the retirement age to ease pension budget pressures in many provinces. However, concerns have been raised about job seekers chasing too few openings. Raising the retirement age could increase labor force participation and mitigate population aging effects. The Chinese government must address population decline to prevent accelerated shrinking of the labor force and negatively impact economic growth. Senior Chinese strategist says Xi Jinping suggests a gradual increase in retirement age starting next year but taking 15 years to fully implement. The move will help maintain stable productivity growth, they say. ATN learned that China's pension system is facing budget deficits in 11 of its 31 provincial level jurisdictions, with the Chinese Academy of Sciences where pensions are limited to 65 and 63 years. Malaysian police said on Friday that they will summon the top management of an Islamic business group after children rescued from charity homes, allegedly run by the firm, suffered injuries consistent with sexual and physical assault. Police this week rescued 402 children and youths in raids carried out at 20 premises that they said were operated by Islamic conglomerates Global Ikhwan Services and Business. However, GISB has said they did not run the homes and denied allegations of sexual abuses at the properties. A GISB spokesman said on Friday that the firm had yet to be summoned by police. 172 rescued children in Malaysia have undergone physical and mental health screenings, showing injuries, emotional trauma, stunted growth, and some disabilities or illness. Critics question why action was not taken earlier, following complaints since 2011. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has instructed authorities to investigate and take swift action against GISB, a firm linked to a banned Islamic religious sect. Out of 171 arrested, 159 are pending investigation, while others are minors and released. 4 men and 1 woman are being investigated in sodomy cases. GISB member Razaruddin has identified 392 children who remain in Saudi Arabia after abandoning their parents, a form of neglect and abuse. Authorities have screened 392 children, with those with special needs transferred to welfare departments. Razaruddin suggests the probe may include allegations of cheating and money laundering. Hong Kong Journalists Association has reported harassment and intimidation of dozens of Hong Kong journalists and their families since June, highlighting the damage to press freedom and the need for a strong response to such behavior. ATN gathered that journalists were targeted, media companies and organizations including Hong Kong Journalists Association's Executive Committee and 13 media outlets including Hong Kong Free Press, HK Future and 2 journalism education institutions. At least 15 journalists, their families and associates, including landlords, charities, schools and private businesses, have received anonymous complaints by email or letter from self-proclaimed patriots. The Hong Kong Journalists Association said some journalists or their associates were targeted in private Facebook groups. In at least 4 cases, trolls used Facebook and Wikipedia to make violent threats, including death threats, according to reports. 2 editors in Hong Kong have been convicted of sedition, marking the first against any journalist since 1997. The case comes amid a national security clampdown following 2019 protests. Hong Kong's Media Freedom Association has contacted Meta and the Wikimedia Foundation for the harassment campaign. Hong Kong Free Press Director Tom Grundy has reported receiving anonymous letters threatening unimaginable consequences and collateral damage unless evicted. The Hong Kong Police Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data, Wikimedia Foundation, Trust and Safety, and Facebook owner Meta have not commented on the harassment. The organization hopes the public will support journalism work to ensure reporting is free from fear. Deaths toll in the aftermath of a typhoon in Vietnam climbed to 233 on Friday as rescue workers recovered more bodies from areas hit by landslides and flash floods, state media reported. Typhoon Yagi has triggered flash floods and landslides in Vietnam, with 103 people missing and over 800 injured. The most fatalities have occurred in Laotia province, where flash floods swept away the hamlet of Lang No. Heavy rainfalls have damaged roads, making it difficult to bring in heavy equipment for rescue efforts. Around 500 personnel with sniper dogs are on hand in Vietnam following a landslide that left 21 dead and 10 more missing. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh pledged to continue searching for those missing. The disaster has sparked a nationwide mourning and recovery effort. Experts attribute the strength of storms like Typhoon Yagi to climate change, with flooding and landslides also affecting northern Thailand, Laos, and northeastern Myanmar. In Thailand, 10 deaths have been reported due to flooding or landslides. And Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra flew to the north on Friday to visit affected people in the border town of Mae Sai. Thailand's Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation warned of a continuing risks of flash floods in multiple areas through Wednesday, as new rain was expected to increase the Mekong's river levels further. Vietnam has received international aid following the Yagi typhoon, with Australia providing $2 million in aid, South Korea pledging $2 million, and the U.S. Embassy providing $1 million through the U.S. Agency for International Development USAID. Heavy rains have damaged factories in northern provinces like Haiphong, home to electric car company VinFast and Apple parts suppliers. The Center for Strategic and International Studies warns that repair efforts will likely lower output for the next weeks and months, affecting international supply chains. The embassy is closely monitoring humanitarian needs and ensuring assistance reaches populations in need. Russian-guided bomb attack on Friday killed 2 people and injured 6 others, including a child in the Ukraine's northern Sumy region, local authorities said. The attack damaged residential houses and a clinic and cut power supplies, the regional military administration said on Telegram Messenger. President Vladimir Putin has delivered a clear message to the West about the consequences it will face if it allows Ukraine to hit Russian territory with Western long-range missiles, the Kremlin said on Friday. Putin said on Thursday that the West would be directly fighting with Russia if it allowed Ukraine to strike Russian territory with Western-made long-range missiles, a move he said would alter the nature and scope of the conflict. President Volodymyr Zelensky has been pleading with Kyiv's allies for months to let Ukraine fire Western missiles, including long-range U.S. ATACMS and British Storm Shadows deep into Russia territory to limit Moscow's ability to launch attacks. U.S. President Joe Biden and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will discuss whether to give the go-ahead for such strikes as talks in Washington on Friday. Putin said on Thursday that such a move would drag the country supplying Kyiv with long-range missiles directly into the war. He said satellites targeting data and programming of the missiles' flight paths would have to be provided by NATO military personnel, as Kyiv did not have the capabilities itself. Russia has revoked the accreditation of 6 British diplomats accused of spying, stating that the UK's involvement in inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia was baseless. The UK Foreign Office defended the accusations, stating that the diplomats left Russia weeks ago. The move comes as Prime Minister Keir Starmer visits Washington for a serious escalation of the war, which equates to direct participation of NATO countries. He is unapologetic about protecting its national interest. Former National Security Advisor Lord Peter Ricketts argued that the allegations were retaliatory punishment for the UK's military support of Ukraine and Putin's attempt to intimidate Western politicians. Diplomatic accreditation is a recognition of a person's diplomatic status by the host nation. The British Foreign Service, FSB, has deemed diplomats responsible for intelligence gathering as having violated the Vienna Conventions, a UN treaty on diplomatic relations. The decision was announced on Friday, stating that the British Embassy had gone beyond the limits outlined in the Vienna Conventions. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova echoed the FSB's assessment. The UK Security Service has announced plans to revoke accreditation from British diplomats involved in similar activities, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The expulsion of diplomats has become more common since then. The UK has aid. The UK has also committed to sending hundreds of more short-range missiles to Ukraine. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will meet US President in Russia. Ukraine Prime President Volodymyr Zelensky has been pleading with allies for months to let Ukraine fire Western missiles, including long-range US ATACMS and British Storm of 4,000 red feathers from the scarlet ibis bird, which had been on display at a Danish museum for about 300 years. The cloak, taken from the Tupinamba people during the Portuguese colonial period, emphasizes the importance of demarcating ancestral lands to preserve traditions. A group of 200 Tupinamba people, including indigenous chief Susu Arana, Morubakzada Tupinamba, traveled over 1,200 kilometers to see a precious clock and reconnect with their ancient traditions. The garment symbolizes a mixture of sadness and joy as it represents the loss of a north by Europeans. Several Tupinamba sacred capes, believed to date back to the 16th century, are still on display in museums across Europe. Tupinamba leaders in Brazil advocate for reclaiming indigenous lands and rights, despite the government's pledge to do so. Despite the undemarcated territory of the Tupinambas, the speaker vetoed an attack against indigenous peoples, but the National Congress overruled it. They remain in favor of the rights and oppose the limit on land claims, as the Tupinambas claim the territory is being devastated. Gazprom Neft-owned Moscow oil refinery on Tuesday resumed operations at Crude Distillation Unit 6, CDU-6, which was suspended following a drone attack on September 1, two industry resources told newsmen on Friday. Gazprom Neft did not immediately reply to a request for comment. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said on the day of the attack that several drones targeted the Moscow refinery and caused a fire at a separate technical room at the plant's source said. The refinery suspended operations at combined refinery units, Europlus, that includes CDU-6. The Euro unit accounts for some 50% of the plant's total prime refining capacity, as its crude distillation unit has a capacity of 6 million metric tons of oil per year. In 2023, the Moscow plant processed 11.6 million tons of crude oil, producing 2.6 million tons of gasoline, 3.3 million tons of gas oil, 2.3 million tons of fuel oil, and 0.9 million tons of jet fuel. Opinion poll on Friday showed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing Likud party would form the largest single party in parliament if an election were held now, underlining a gradual recovery since the October 7 attacks last year. The poll, published in the left-wing Ma'arif Daily, showed Likud winning 24 seats against 32 at present, its highest score in the Ma'arif poll since October 7. It puts the National Unity Party, led by century's former General Benny Gantz, on 21. Netanyahu's right-wing coalition, with a clutch of nationalist, religious, and ultra-Orthodox parties, would lose any election held now, with 53 seats in the 120-seat parliament against 58 for the main opposition bloc, according to the poll. But Likud's advance shows how far Netanyahu has moved since last year, when his standing was hit by public fury at the security failures when Hamas gunmen stormed into Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking more than 250 hostages. Despite coalition tensions and protests, the Israeli government has held together for almost 2 years, with an election due in 2026. Netanyahu's personal standing as prime minister has recovered, with respondents favoring him over other candidates. Likud has gained 16 to 18 seats in parliament, but support for nationalist religious parties, Jewish power and religious Zionism has not followed, attracting opposition. Body of a Turkish-American activist was received with a solemn ceremony at the airport in Istanbul on Friday, arriving a week after she was shot in the head by Israeli troops in the occupied West Bank. The Istanbul governor and other officials lined up in front of Aysenur Egi's coffin, wrapped in the red and white Turkish flag, with police in formal uniform standing guard at each end, and is made by plane, the governor's office told reporters. The funeral was said to be held on Saturday in the Turkish Aegina coastal city of Didim, where her family